Attention all F1 fans, welcome to F1 Max. Buckle up F1 fans because the cost cap controversy has taken the paddock by storm. Ever since its introduction in 2021, this new rule has been shrouded in intrigue and speculation. Red Bull's overspending became the talk of the town, but could they really be the only team to break the rules? Brace yourselves because today we uncover a startling revelation that up to 6 teams might have already breached the cost cap. That's right, 6 teams. Join F1 Max as we delve into the depths of this contentious issue, exploring what the cost cap entails and unraveling the potential culprits. Get ready for a jaw-dropping ride through the high-stakes world of Formula One's financial battle. Welcome to our investigation into F1's cost cap conundrum. Seeing as the cost cap in Formula One is still a relatively new rule, not a lot of fans are familiar with the premise. It is simple. F1 teams are only allowed to spend a certain amount every season. Teams are not allowed to recklessly throw money at their cars anymore. In 2021, the cost cap was $145 million. Sounds like a lot, but somehow Red Bull was still able to spend more than that. In 2022, the figure was reduced to $140 million, going down to $135 million for 2023. $135 million sounds like more than enough for an F1 team to survive on for a single season, but the cost cap has some exclusions. Driver salaries, travel costs, and marketing spending are all excluded, and yet somehow teams still break these rules. The main reason why the cost cap was introduced to Formula One was to try to bring the field closer together. Prior to the introduction of the cap, teams like Mercedes and Red Bull were thought to be spending around $400 million every season. So how could teams like Haas and Alfa Romeo compete when they were spending a quarter of what the big teams were spending? By making all the teams on the grid spend a similar amount, it was thought that the cost cap would help to make the field more competitive. Formula One had seen Mercedes dominate for the entire hybrid era, with 2016 being the only exciting title race in that time. The sport was being dominated by the top teams more than ever, and it was losing some of the unpredictability that makes F1 so thrilling. While the cost cap has not really shaken up the standings a massive amount, that doesn't mean that the rules are being followed. Formula One's reigning world champions might not have been listening when Formula One explained the new rules to all of the teams. Christian Horner must have been daydreaming about Max Verstappen while the rules were given out, considering Red Bull broke the cost cap in its very first season. 2021 was already a controversial season before Red Bull were found guilty of a minor overspend of the cost cap. In total, there were 13 areas of the budget that were misinterpreted by the team, which led to the overspend. F1 found Red Bull guilty toward the end of the 2022 season, and the punishments were severe. Red Bull were hit with a $7 million fine and docked 10% of their aero testing time for 2023. F1 teams have a limited amount of time they are allowed to test in the wind tunnel, and so Red Bull were not pleased to be losing 10% of that time. The punishment clearly has not hurt Red Bull too bad, as they are faster than ever in 2023. Red Bull might not be the only team to fall foul of the new cost cap rules. Christian Horner was on the defensive for much of the last few months of 2022. The Red Bull boss had to constantly defend his team from the criticisms aimed at Red Bull for breaching the cost cap. His comments would usually include pointing the blame at other teams as well. One of the interesting comments that Horner made last year was about the possibility of other teams breaking the salary cap. Horner said, "A danger for 2022 is that there could be 6 teams in breach of the cap." That is a huge claim to make, and Horner did give an explanation for one of the reasons for this. The Red Bull boss added, "Energy prices have been exponential, but thankfully we've been protected from that. But there is that chance that several teams, many of which have stated it during F1 Commission meetings, will break the cap this year. Considering how long it takes for the accounts of each team to be collected, we have not heard much since about whether any teams have broken the cap in 2022, but Horner is not the only person concerned about other teams spending. Stefano Domenicali might be a name that some F1 fans are not familiar with, but he plays a crucial role in the sport. The former Ferrari team principal is now the CEO of Formula One Group, which means he plays an important role in the regulation setting of the sport. Domenicali spoke at the start of the year about the possibility of F1 teams breaking the cost cap in 2022. In an interview with Sky Sports, Domenicali said, "I'm more than nervous. I'm pretty sure that everyone understands now what the effects is if there is a breach, and I totally agree that the focus on this will actually be very big." He added, "I think that is a point of attention mainly for the credibility and to check if everyone is respecting that rule, but it has to be done earlier than later. We are discussing this on the FIA's side to make sure that the control and the certification will be done much earlier, because the effect, if some teams will be over it, has to be done in a proper way in as short a time as possible to be more credible." Domenicali added, "We see other sports that are tackling the financial regulation with, in my opinion, too long a time for a reaction, and this is not good." So it seems like it's not just Christian Horner that is concerned about teams breaking the budget cap. While Christian Horner or Max Verstappen may be the face of Red Bull, Helmut Marko might just be the mouth. Red Bull's advisor always has something to say when it comes to Formula 1. Marko has previously spoken about other teams breaking the cost cap. In an interview last year, Helmut Marko said, "I think the current status is that 6 teams are over it. Inflation is something that was not calculable to that extent, especially when it comes to energy costs. It is a good point that the huge inflation of energy prices will have had a massive effect on F1 team spending." Marko also offered some defense for Red Bull's overspending. He said, "It was the first year of the budget cap. The rules were vague. The FIA reacted late with clarifications. We had Ernst & Young, auditors, check everything. You have to rely on something. We thought we had a safety net of $3 million. In the end, there was only $400,000 left." Red Bull did still overspend, and we've not really seen other teams complaining about the exact wording that the FIA have used. So who could be the teams that are over the spending limit? While Red Bull were the team to take all of the headlines for a cost cap breach, there was another team that were punished for cost cap breaches. That team was Aston Martin. They were fined $450,000 for what was called a procedural infringement of the 2021 F1 budget cap rules. The big reason why Aston Martin's penalty was only a tiny fraction of the punishment was that Aston Martin were not over the cost cap. Instead, Aston Martin had inaccurately excluded and/or adjusted costs in the calculation of its relevant costs. This included their spending around new headquarters, wind tunnel fees, and their F1 simulator. Lawrence Stroll has put a huge amount of investment into the infrastructure of Aston Martin, so it is no surprise that they got close to breaching the cost cap. Considering we have previously seen Aston Martin get close to the cost cap, could they be breaching it this season? The Silverstone team have made an incredible jump forward in performance in 2023. Could this be related to spending? We'll have to wait and see. McLaren Racing CEO Zak Brown has had a lot to say about the cost cap, particularly about how it is affecting the team's sustainability. His team published their sustainability report on Thursday and showed that McLaren are becoming more sustainable. However, the report did also note that one challenge of the current financial regulations is that costs incurred for sustainability initiatives sit within the cost cap. This means that any money McLaren spend on furthering their sustainability will be involved in the cost cap, even though F1 is trying to become more sustainable. McLaren boss Zak Brown commented on the regulation saying, "We strongly believe in the cost cap and wouldn't want to see anything that undermines its integrity. But current regulations have created some unintended barriers when it comes to investing in sustainability." Brown added, "It's been fantastic to see so much support from F1 and other teams on this issue, and we're delighted that the FIA has established a working group to explore next steps." So McLaren are clearly not happy with the current cost cap, and we're yet to find out whether that means they might have broken it. I'm sure the FIA will have been thrilled about the idea that teams might be exploiting a loophole in the regulations. Alpine boss Otmar Safnauer commented on teams using different businesses to get around the spending regulations. "It seems like more and more teams are looking at their well-remunerated employees that way for a cost cap reasons. And we've got to make sure that there comes a time where all these ancillary businesses that are now cropping up, that without a budget cap wouldn't be there. We've got to look at that and make sure that the loopholes aren't big enough to where effectively we don't have a cap." It is a great point from Safnauer. There is a risk of teams using other businesses to get around the budget cap. It is going to be difficult in the future to see how F1 regulate teams who have other businesses which feed into the F1 team. By the sounds of it, we're going to have to wait a while to see if any teams actually broke the cost cap. The report will not be ready until around the summer break, and so fans are going to have to wait. So what do you think? Have any F1 teams broken the spending rules in 2022? Why not put your thoughts in the comments down below? While you're down there, why not hit the like button and subscribe? Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.